ThinkTech on OC16, Hawaii's weekly newscast on things that matter to tech and to Hawaii. I'm Jay Fidell.
And I'm Duke Oishi.
In our show this time, we'll cover the ThinkTech panel program on public spaces in Hawaii. What can we do to retain them?
The program studied the importance of public spaces in our lives, how we've been losing them, and what we can do about it.
Everyone knows our city is not an architectural utopia. It's eclectic at best. The good stuff was done a long time ago. Now, with the high-rise boom in Kaka'ako, we need to catch up and keep up on our public spaces.
In our program, we had opening remarks from Britney Taamu-Miyashiro, a millennial. Our panel for the program included architects Fritz Johnson, David Miller, Glenn Miura, Tonia Moy, Scott Wilson, Ben Lee, architect and former city manager, Ian Sandison, engineer and lawyer, Carroll Taylor, lawyer. We also heard from Grace Zheng, a landscape architect.
As far as our open spaces and public spaces are in Hawaii concerned, I think a lot of it, unfortunately, is politically and economically driven by developers and short-sightedness. Open spaces, as was mentioned earlier, is not just an open space, but it's a social space. And it brings all kinds of different people together. But the social space changes over the years. And what might be very functional at this point in time may totally change, another 10 or 15 years or another generation. And we've seen that happen in Europe quite a bit with Newtown and social planning, where some communities were designed for immediate needs, and as it turns out, they actually broke up families, workforces, and college kids leaving home because there wasn't, there's a lot of different reasons there, but you really have to start thinking long-term for social planning, the same thing with parks, because if you think of Kapolani Park as perhaps an equestrian area or a racetrack at one time or a place for royalty, it's turned into soccer, it's turned into softball, it's turned into entertainment, it's turned into being next to the beach. And everyone can remember Diamond Head when it used to be the Crater Day Festival. Things they change, and how do we plan that far in advance? So when we think about our public spaces, we have to think as best we can for flexibility based upon history.
We need to balance lawmaking with placemaking. I know there are legislators and city council basically is saying, well, we can improve our community and quality of life by making laws. But we're really talking about placemaking. And what is vibrant about our community, food, entertainment, people, activity, authenticity, right? We keep saying that we design it for our residents and our people, and the visitors will come. You design it for the visitors, nobody comes, right? Okay, let's go to the next slide. I'm sorry I don't have a PowerPoint thing, but this is the Bean at Millennium Park in Chicago. We were just there a couple years ago for AIA convention. Incredible, incredible space. The Millennium Park is being expanded twice its size because it's been so successful. Next slide. And then you walk underneath it and you see this, kaleidoscope of images. Next. Pritzker Pavilion by Frank Gehry. This is on a weekend, we were there. There's 1,000 people doing Zumba exercises. It's incredible, it's great, it's great. Next. San Francisco Jazz Festival, Fillmore Street. And they closed down the street, and I think some of our cabinet members, former cabinet members would remember, closed down the street, have festival, have food. Actually, I have a little isolated drinking bar that they get a beer and so forth. But lots of people. So I'm going to touch on maybe 4 major things. One, of course, is Waikiki, and this was Waikiki in 1985 through maybe 94. I was fortunate enough to be planning director in 1989 to 1990.
I was born and raised in New York City. I walked to school starting from kindergarten. I biked and I bused later on, and by the age of 12, I got around using 10-cent subway tokens. My parents always said, be careful and be home by dinner. That was about it. So, like most New Yorkers, I was a baseball fan. We had the Yankees, Dodgers, and Giants in New York when I grew up. And a World Series in New York? Of course, where else would there ever be a World Series? So, Years later, I studied architecture in Pittsburgh. It was my first experience in a smaller city. And in my sophomore year, the Pittsburgh Pirates won the World Series with Bill Mazeroski's ninth inning last game home run, their first World Series since 1925. Pittsburgh went crazy. You'd walk down the street, you'd see houses with picture windows and big pictures of the Pirates, the whole team, and American flags flying, and it didn't matter. You waited for a bus, and people would talk to you, you'd talk to everybody about it, and it was just absolutely amazing. And I, as a New Yorker, you know, New Yorkers can have a lot of spirit, but sometimes they can appear kind of glib, because, you know, it's New York, where else is there? And so this really resonated with me. And frankly, from that experience of living in Pittsburgh, I decided that I always would henceforth be living in a smaller city with more personal connection to community.
The creation of open space requires someone with a vision and the land and the right location and the right surrounding uses. And you know, it really helps to have money and a good designer. And that's I'm going to be focusing on all those issues. The Tamarind Park had all of these ingredients, and it all came successfully together at this point where on Bishop and King that created this, to me, one of the finest open space in downtown Honolulu. To me, it defines Honolulu as the heart of Honolulu. But anyone younger than 45 years old would not have known what was there before and just take it for granted that it was always an open space. But could I have the first slide? Oh, it is up there. Okay, yeah, the Alexander Young Hotel stood on that site. It was a grand hotel, a great building, 200 units, 4 and 5 stories building. And it was the fashionable place to be. The roof deck was the fashionable place to be at that time in the early 1900s. Now, fast forward to 1980. You can bring up the next slide. Yeah, thank you. And you know, when I walked into Franklin Gray's office, he was the original designer of this building. I saw a model of this being worked on, and actually Ben Lee was there too. Ben Lee was overlooking all us young architects in 1980, giving us a hard time, but Ben was always a perfectionist, if you all know that, right?
What I'm going to show you is basically my opinion of kind of what works and what doesn't, and that's what I've been asked. But I think David kind of went over to some of these, but anyway, what I think anyway. And one of what David was talking about, the journey, is, you know, what works and what doesn't sort of, I'm going to sound like a lawyer now, but it depends. It depends on what the intent was. And so, like, there's the journey ones he talked about, and in mine, I called it, like, to beautify a building. So it's kind of more like a neighboring park that kind of, like, softens the building, brings good scale to the building. And some are very successful in this. And then, like, in downtown, these are successful to soften the building and bring scale down. But the next one is, but I think what most people are here for and what most people really like to see is an active public amenity, which, you know, and everybody went through Tamarind Park already. So what works and what doesn't is sort of the, you know, like, water features are always really nice, right? Everybody loves water features. I know they're expensive, but they're, oh, can you, yeah. So, like, even like this one that I just went to the other day when I met with Jay was that below Pioneer Plaza. And what was interesting is that it's downstairs, right? But people will go to it. At lunchtime, it was pretty busy.
When we think of public spaces, we tend to think of sewage treatment plants, bridges, highways, infrastructure systems, sewer collector systems, petroleum distribution systems, electrical distribution systems, infrastructure. So that's our view of a public space. And so one of the things that I've been working on for the last year and a half or so is the notion of sustainability. As you have probably heard, every project, every idea that anybody floats is sustainable. And the reason it's that way is the word lacks definition. There is no legal definition. There is no no sense of what is and what is not sustainable. It is really morphed to fit the particular situation. So in the architect's business, they've gone down the path of the LEEDs system for designing sustainable buildings and for demonstrating a sustainable project. And that's more or less inside the confines, they've almost all spoken, so they won't be able to refute me. Inside the confines of the project, inside the building is where LEEDs applies. What the American Society of Civil Engineers is advocating is sustainability for infrastructure.
He who controls the past controls the future. So I'd like to look at Kapiolani Park in that context of, is there anything that we can learn from that history that would perhaps impact what we do today? Most of you probably know, well, I see there's some of us here who are younger who may not know, but in the 1980s there was a move, I think it was intended to make the park more self-sufficient. It's a big park, it's a pretty park, and it costs a lot of money to maintain. So there are all these, if you don't like it, it's something, you call it a scheme. If you like it, you call it a plan. But there are all these schemes to make the park self-sufficient. And they included that there was going to be a 6-night-a-week authentic Hawaiian laser light show in the shell. That would feature hula dancers and Hawaiian music and laser lights.
I'm going to talk about something more fundamental about public space, which is that it is the site of democracy. And that may sound like a, urban planning 101, but it is incredibly important. It is our common ground. We can't ever forget that. We need to remember that we, as a democracy, have to focus on inclusivity. We have a huge range of people, particularly in Hawaii, and we want to include all of them in our discussions. You think about public space, true public space, Ala Moana Beach Park. You think of it on Memorial Day or New Year's Eve, and that is the epitome of all sectors of our society, rubbing shoulders, face to face, on foot, and we need to keep that as a model. I think Glenn talked about Tamarind Park and Ben and others. Tamarind Park, Ward Village Park, those are actually private spaces. And let's not kid ourselves. You try to go down there and organize a protest. It's a beautiful space. I don't want to knock the features of those places. They are beautiful, and they're very wonderful in their context, but they are not true public spaces. They are privately owned.
I didn't mean to claim that only landscape architects design urban spaces or public spaces, but I just wanted to make sure that our profession overall gets sort of the due credit that it does deserve so greatly, and that what we do is not in isolation. A lot of it has to do with the client, and we work very intimately with architects and planners, and so I want to emphasize that creating public spaces and open spaces is really a team effort, and we can't do without either or one only. Thank you.
Well, I'll keep it simple. I want to pitch the concept of everyday public space. That it's great to concentrate on beautiful parks and town squares and so forth, but our city really needs more first aid on a street level.
The fact that you folks are here, are interested and involved is an encouraging sign, because my one word would be vigilant.
Developing sustainable infrastructure, and my one word would be envision, and that on a very grassroots level, that architects and engineers who are involved in the design of public infrastructure can incorporate sustainability using the LEEDs program for architecture and Envision for public infrastructures.
We're all willing to spend a lot of money on certain things, how we prioritize, like, if you have a house, you always put your money into where guests come. So if we think of Hawaii as your home, we can think of the public spaces as our living room, and that we should invest some money into keeping our living room look really nice, right?
Even though my talk was about the creation of public spaces or open spaces from big business and big land from above, I don't want to give the impression that open space can only be created by people with money. you should not overlook the possibility that it could start from grassroots level with individuals, from citizens below.
Taking risks and doing something special achieves something special. And when we talk about public spaces like Highline or Millennium Park, we're talking about doing something innovative and something that hasn't been done and something that isn't a copy of something else. And I think that's a very, very important thing.
I'll make mine very, very short. You know, our open spaces is a celebration of life, and we need to make it fun. And I hope our government leaders have that enlightened vision to make it fun and exciting and good for our people.
I'll use a couple words. One, I think, would be collaboration and teamwork, because just listening to all the speakers up here, you can pick out a different idea from every one of them.
People intuitively seek out public spaces to be with other people. They gather to express their views, to see and be seen, and to reaffirm their part in a larger society.
It may be too late to change the emerging reality of Kaka'ako, but it isn't too late to soften its impact by expanding our public spaces.
The homeless problem makes things more complex. When the homeless occupy our public spaces, they displace other people. To make things work, we need to keep these spaces available for the public.
But what design elements do we want for our new public spaces? Innovative and ambiguous design is good. Design on a completely human scale is good.
Open space and walk paths are good. Trees, grass, and greenery are good. Places to sit, read, talk, and congregate are good.
Street music, art, entertainment, street scenes, and events are good. Charging stations for laptops and cell phones are good. Bike stands are good.
In an island state where there's too little land and too few owners, absent noblesse oblige, they don't give public spaces much attention.
Public officials customarily focus on projects that are high gain and low risk. Public spaces don't often fall in that category. We need to show these officials that public spaces are critical to community health and to keeping the new entrepreneurial generation here.
The program examined the state of public spaces in Hawaii, how important they are to our QOL, and in fact our democracy.
Some speakers told us about successful public spaces, and others said we haven't kept up and there aren't enough. The underlying question was, why are we losing them, ignoring them, and letting so many of them go flat?
Is it because we care more about high-rises and shopping centers these days? Or is it rather that we care less about open public spaces?
Could it be that we have forgotten our legacy of public spaces? That we, as a hardened collection of self-interested kuleanas and apathetic citizenry, have moved on and don't care about public spaces anymore?
In any event, we found that the question of public spaces is much more than the question of public spaces. It's a test of our community and a window on our future.
Our public spaces are more than a measure of our aesthetics, QOL, or prosperity. They are a statement of who we are, our collective self-image, state of mind, and social psychology.
It's all about political realities, which is the result of undifferentiated public opinion and a troubling flaw in our society. We need to turn public opinion from self-interest to universal enthusiasm for the common good.
It's time for a new mindset for life in the city. It's time to cherish every public space. Let's embrace them and make this the utopia we always wanted.
We've had a number of talk show interviews on ThinkTech regarding the need for public interest on public spaces. Check out youtube.com/ThinkTechHawaii and search on public spaces.
I didn't know you had this. I'll come more often.
I think all the panelists had a very, very good aspect of how to do it, what to do it, how to do it better. Did we do a lot? Yes. Should we do more? Absolutely.
Excellent presentation today, perfect speakers, good questions.
What
Thank
a
you.
valuable resource Think Tank is to Hawaii.
I was amazed at how you put it all together in such a short time, and well, everybody seemed to really know their stuff. I was in a crowd of experts.
I thought it was a wonderful thing. I'm glad you invited me, and I would like to come back and do more.
I think public spaces are very important, and I'm happy to use them whenever I can.
What is public space fundamentally? It's democracy. If you take away public space, you got Dubai.
I thought this is very good, and I think thank you, Jay, for putting this on and keeping us all alert.
Kaka'ako is part of the city in Honolulu. I mean, we really have to acknowledge that and recognize that people don't really care about where district boundaries are. What people care about is that this is a part of the city. It's a functioning part of the city, and we have to really consider its context and say it's a place for everybody.
I think a lot of the ideas today were born out of millennial preferences, like I said, and they're being demanded for the types of cities that we're perhaps going to be raising our kids in one day, something like that. So keep at it and get more millennials on the panel.
I thought it was a fantastic panel you put together, Jay. Really good. Not only, I mean, it was the diversity that is public spaces, but also how do we maintain it, what has been done, our history and the culture and the importance of not only destination parks and open space, but the journey, and we've always missed that in Honolulu.
I wanted to tell you one of the most important public spaces that was overlooked is Irwin Park. That is a parking lot as of World War II, but it used to be a park. It was dedicated as a park, as a landscape companion to Aloha Tower.
Off of that, what about the War Memorial at the Natatorium? I mean, that's one of the 10 things you could put all kind of stuff there and make it an attraction.
I felt very honored to introduce such an amazing panel.
I thought this was a really great event. I mean, I've been starting to go to different urban planning events over the past year. Once I learned what the word urban planning means, and I'm going to study at NYU in the fall and hope to bring that back here to Hawaii. So events like this, I think they're so great for the public.
Well, one of the things I enjoyed most about today's forum on public spaces was the opportunity to raise some questions that spawned further discussion. One of those questions was, can we manage the difficulties we have in serving the homeless community and solving that problem better with spaces owned by private companies or individuals? Or can we do it on public spaces? Now, that opened up what I think could be a can of worms, and that's the great thing about ThinkTech forums. It's not that we answer all the questions. Sometimes we raise questions that spawn the kind of discussion that we need to have as a community.
And now let's take a look at our ThinkTech calendar of events going forward.
ThinkTech broadcasts its talk shows live on the internet from noon to 5 p.m. on weekday afternoons. And then we broadcast our earlier shows all night long. If you missed a show or you want to replay or share any show, they're all archived on demand on YouTube.
Visit thinktechhawaii.com for our weekly calendar and our live stream and YouTube links, or better yet, to sign up on our email list and get the daily docket of our upcoming shows.
If you hadn't heard, ThinkTech has moved into larger quarters in Pioneer Plaza, and our new studio here is really beautiful. More than ever, we invite you to come down, see our studio, and be part of our live audience. Just contact me, Jay, at thinktechhawaii.com. Be part of our civic engagement here on ThinkTech.
Do you like ThinkTech? Give us a thumbs up on YouTube or send us a tweet at ThinkTechHI. We want to know what you're thinking and how you feel about current issues and events affecting Hawaii. We want you to stay in touch with us, and we want to stay in touch with you. Let's think together.
On June 18th, ThinkTech, along with Oceanit, will present a downtown forum luncheon panel program on the subject of the military in Hawaii. An uncertain future?
We'll ask what units are here and what they're doing. We'll ask what they contribute to our community and the economy and what would happen without them. And we'll ask about the considerations that will determine their future.
Join us and raise your awareness about the critical changes taking place in Hawaii. Be a part of the conversation and sign up to attend on thinktechhawaii.com.
We'll be right back to wrap up this week's edition of ThinkTech. But first, we want to thank our underwriters who are so very important to us.
Okay, Duke, that wraps up this week's edition of ThinkTech here in our brand new studio at Pioneer Plaza. Remember, you can watch ThinkTech on OC16 like 7 times every week. Can't get enough of it, just like Duke does when he's not helping us build new studios. For additional times, check out OC16.tv.
For sure, Jay. For lots more ThinkTech videos and for underwriting and sponsorship opportunities on ThinkTech on OC16, visit thinktechhawaii.com. Be a guest or volunteer, a producer or intern, yes, even an OC16 host like me, and help us reach and have an impact on Hawaii.
Thanks so much for being part of our ThinkTech family and for supporting our open discussion of tech, energy diversification, and globalism in Hawaii. You can watch this show throughout the week and tune in next Sunday evening for our next important weekly episode. I'm Jay Fidell.
I'm Duke Oishi. Aloha, everyone.
Out!